U.S. ceasefire proposal has been supported by Netanyahu, though he denied that, but was being not accepted by Hamas. Now Hamas says that they will accept the ceasefire proposal, even though it's not immediately calling for a permanent ceasefire. But Netanyahu, and now I wanted to read from the Times of Israel, the headline, security officials shocked by PM's announcement of Gaza non-negotiables report. Security officials were caught off guard Sunday when Prime Minister Netanyahu publicly announced a list of non-negotiables for the ongoing hostage negotiations with Hamas, the Hebrew media is reporting. An unnamed security official told the Ynet news site that the statement by Netanyahu's office was inappropriate conduct that will harm the chances of bringing the hostages back home. Can you talk about the state of negotiations now in Doha, when you have the head of U.S. intelligence, William Burns, there, the head of Israeli intelligence, Mossad, Barnea, there? What is happening? And do you agree with some of these Israeli officials who are saying it was meant to derail this last negotiation?
I think everybody in Israel knows. Every intelligence person in the United States probably already know that the reality is that Netanyahu is continuously undermining any possibility of reaching an agreement. He played games already several times. There was a moment a few months ago when a proposal was presented to Hamas, and the Americans said that Israel is accepting that proposal. Hamas accepted it, but then Netanyahu retreated and undermined it. When Mr. Biden announced his initiative saying that it is an Israeli proposal, Netanyahu never confirmed that. And when it got into serious negotiations, as it's happening now, and Hamas said they are accepting and showed an utmost amount of flexibility, to my knowledge, Netanyahu is now escalating the situation in Gaza. This is not the first time he does that. When he is trying now to ethnically cleanse 400,000 people from Gaza City, how could negotiations work? So Netanyahu continuously plays games to undermine any possibility of an agreement. This man doesn't care about the Israeli prisoners. He wants them all killed. He doesn't care about the lives of any of them. The families of these Israeli prisoners know that very well. All Netanyahu cares about is his own personal interest. That's not my opinion only. It's the opinion of so many Israeli leaders. And I think Netanyahu wants only to continue this war as long as it takes, and he wants to avoid the fact that because he knows very well that the end of this war will mean the end of his political career.
That's right.
He will be investigated for his failure on the 7th of October. He will be investigated for his failure in running this war, and he will be also presented to the courts for 4 cases of corruption that are following him, each of which could take him to jail. So he doesn't care about anybody. He cares only about himself. As I said, maybe on one of your programs, this man is ready to kill his mother to stay in power. And now he's risking the lives of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians and maybe the lives of many Israelis, because all he cares about is his own interest. But that is not only simply his personal interest. He is sitting in a government that is increasingly fascist. And he has fascist people in his government like Smotrich and Ben Gvir, and these people want the total and complete ethnic cleansing of all Palestinians.
That's right.
They speak frankly and openly, like Ben Gvir, who is the Minister of Internal Security, about executing all Palestinian prisoners. They say that. They declare every morning that all Palestinians must be evicted, not only from Gaza, but also from the West Bank. Smotrich keeps telling we should fill the West Bank with settlements and settlers so that Palestinians would lose any hope of a state of their own and then have to leave, which is ethnic cleansing, or accept a life of subjugation, which is apartheid, or die, which is exactly the genocide they are trying to commit now in Gaza. It's a terrible situation. Netanyahu will not be restrained except with Palestinian steadfastness and resistance and sanctions immediately on his government.
Well, Dr. Mustafa Barghouti, I want to thank you for being with us. Palestinian physician, activist, politician, serves as General Secretary of the Palestinian National Initiative, usually in Ramallah, speaking to us for the first time in years from Washington.
And now we see the truth in the matter. Everything that man just said is 100% true. In all ways, you see what I'm saying? In all ways, it's true. So the world should know this by now. So while people are running around spying and shit, you know what I'm saying, across there with a black truck, you know, everybody knows. So what the hell is spying on? That's the question we have to ask on this shit that they be doing. Because this is what Netanyahu have been doing the whole entire time. You know what I'm saying? Facts.
His son, Roman Morello.
Now we're going to check more info on this one and see what else is going on. We have another one coming in. Hold on, folks. We're coming in. President.
State from NATO member nations for a 3-day summit in Washington, D.C. to mark the 75th anniversary of the nuclear-armed military alliance.
Listen.
NATO's expanded from 12 founding member states to 32. Sweden's at the summit as a full NATO member for the first time. Now, Ukraine's path to membership in the alliance is, quote, irreversible, according to a leaked version of a joint declaration expected to be released today. In his opening address, President Biden pledged further NATO support for Ukraine against Russia's invasion.
American people money.
The United States,
The common
Germany,
people's
Netherlands,
dollar.
Romania, and Italy will provide Ukraine with the equipment for 5 additional strategic air defense systems. In the coming months, the United States and our partners intend to provide Ukraine with dozens of additional tactical air defense systems. The United States will make sure that when we export critical air defense interceptors, Ukraine goes to the front of the line.
Listen.
Also on Tuesday, President Biden awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom to outgoing NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. The incoming NATO head, former Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, who's been called the Trump Whisperer for an episode in 2018 when he convinced then President Trump that NATO funding from other countries was increasing as Trump had demanded. Rutte is seen as someone who could deter Trump from leaving NATO if he's re-elected. Over this past weekend, an anti-NATO protest was held in Washington, D.C. Speakers included German parliament member Sevim Dagdalin.
We need peace instead of NATO. We need, at long last, to stand up for democratic and popular sovereignty and to reject the indignity of being a vassal state of Washington, which is just about all we have gotten from the ruling coalition in Berlin. Peace, not NATO.
German lawmaker Sevim Dagdalin joins us now, still in Washington, D.C. She's a member of the German parliament with the Wagenknecht Alliance and a member of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. Her forthcoming book is titled NATO, A Reckoning with the Atlantic Alliance. Her new piece for Consortium News is headlined 75 Years of NATO, 75 Years of Denial. Welcome back to Democracy Now!, Sevim Dagdalin. If you can explain why you came to Washington, D.C., and give us your history of NATO, what you think it's most important to understand.
All 32 of the asses.
Thanks for having me, Amy. I think the most important thing about the history of NATO is that it's a history of denial, that they have 3 great myths. The first is that it is a defense alliance, and at least after 1999, with the aggression against the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, we know it is a war alliance. They breached the international law. They were bombing Belgrade 79 days, even television stations, the Chinese embassy, and 20 years of war in Afghanistan, the aggression against Iraq, the aggression 2011 against Libya. That shows us this is just a lie with a defensive alliance. The second great myth of the NATO is that they are an alliance, a collective of democracies against authoritarian regimes. And this is a historic lie. Just one example, one of the founding member states was Portugal under the fascist dictator Salazar, who tortured Africans in concentration camps in Mozambique, in Angola. So the NATO had never problem with fascist dictators. Even the bilateral treaties between the United States and the Spanish dictator Franco was at stake. And the third great myth of the NATO is that they are an alliance of values and human rights. But how can you talk about human rights and values if you still have the torture center in Guantanamo Bay where people are tortured in the war on terrorism of the United States?
That's called lying lips of abomination.
14 years of prosecution of torture against a journalist like Julian Assange, whose crime was to expose U.S. war crimes in Iraq or NATO war crimes in Afghanistan, or even according to the well-known Brown University in the United States, that in the last 20 years, the wars of the United States and their allies killed more than 4.5 million people. And if we look to Gaza, which is unconditionally supported by the United States and the NATO, and especially, for example, from Germany, we see it's a hypocrisy to talk about human rights if they are complicit to all the crimes done by the Israeli government. I mean, killing 15,000 children in Gaza, you cannot justify that with of course, the legitimate right of self-defense. But this war with more than 15,000 dead children is not an act of self-defense anymore, and the NATO is complicit to this war. So we do have this great myth, and I think it was about time on the 75th anniversary to do a reckoning with all these crimes.
One of the summit's crucial goals is to offer Ukraine an irreversible path to NATO membership. Of course, Ukrainian President Zelensky is in the United States right now. How sustainable is NATO's continued military support for Ukraine? Do you see it getting in the way of any kind of negotiation that would end the war?
Well, first of all, we have to see that the NATO head of state and government are going to deepen their strategy in the proxy war in Ukraine. That means even more weapons and even more money for Ukraine. And on the other side, less money for their own population, for healthcare, for education, for infrastructure, or for affordable social housing, because this is the other side of this coin. That they have social cuts on the other side to finance this money going to Ukraine and the weapons. And I found it very remarkable the last days, even though I do not agree on many things of the Hungarian head of state, Mr. Viktor Orban, but I found it very remarkable how much he's been criticized for just trying to have a dialogue. And I think it's the right way to go, what he is doing with his trips to Kiev first, and then to Moscow, and then to Beijing, and now in Washington. He's trying to have a dialogue, because whoever wants to stop the killing in Ukraine, he has to send diplomats and not weapons.
Let me ask you about Germany, where you are from. You're a member of parliament there. The U.S. is the largest arms supplier to Israel. Germany is the second largest arms supplier. This is the 75th anniversary of NATO. What are the implications of NATO's support for Israel right now?
Well, the implications are that the NATO lost, even if they had at least a tiny little bit of moral integrity, they lost every moral integrity, at least in the global south, with their unconditional support for the, in parts, very extreme right-wing government of Benjamin Netanyahu. And even in Europe, for example, we do have support for recognition of the Palestinian state by 3 member states like Ireland, Spain, and Norway, because they want to stop this
Sweden's already
support.
done it.
Yeah, and they want to stop this unconditional support. So you have rising contradictions and crisis within the European Union and the NATO states. According to this unconditional support, and in Germany, it's rising because, as you said, we are the second biggest supplier of weapons. We've been actually, and we've been lawsuited before the International Court of Justice in The Hague. Nicaragua did an indictment against the weapon deliverers. And pardon?
We have 5 seconds.
Yeah. And I think the most important thing is that we as Germany have to go our own sovereign, independent foreign policy, and
we have to leave it there. Sevim Dagdelen is a German parliament member joining us from Washington, D.C.